Facebook page, it doesn't look like we're live, but B.Live says we're live, so I hope we're
All
live.
right, we must be live.
Oh, there we are. Now I see us. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Stone. I am with Bill Kerig of Great Coach, and I got connected to Bill through a mutual friend, John O'Sullivan of Changing the Game Project. And for those of you who listened to my podcast with John from a couple weeks ago, and sorry, I'm like looking off center, but it's just kind of the way everything's positioned in here. It's just kind of weird. Anyway, if you listened to my podcast with John a couple weeks ago, John talked about Bill and the work he's doing with Great Coach to kind of give us a Yelp of youth coaches, right, Bill? I'm gonna let you explain it better because it's your baby.
Definitely my baby. Yes. So although I like to quickly draw a distinction between Yelp and Great Coach.
Okay.
So the mission of Great Coach is to help make youth and amateur sports better, safer, and more enriching for all the people involved. And the way that we do that is we focused on what I think is the most important part of the whole youth sports experience, and that's the coach-athlete relationship. Mm-hmm. And when I started the company, actually previous to starting the company, I did an informal survey of all these youth sports parents, and I said, hey, will you just answer two questions for me? One, have you ever Googled your kid's coach? And two, have you ever Googled where to go to lunch? And it was astounding to me. What I found is that nobody had ever Googled their kid's coach.
Zero.
Like, nobody. The first person I found who actually said yes was Eric Hayden, who's a multi-time Olympic gold medal speed skater, complete sports insider. And I'm talking about parents, much like your tennis parents, spending tons of money, dropping their kid off with a guy or a gal whose last name they might not even know that well, but they're going out of town with their kids. And, you know, I'm a coach myself. I coach hockey. You see some of my kids back there. And I thought, well, this is interesting, and this is a challenge, and maybe this is a place where I could help by creating software that would help people understand who great coaches are and help great coaches stand up and stand out and help not so great coaches either become great or get away from our kids, right? Yeah. So the analogy to Yelp, we sort of struggled with that in the beginning, and we said, who gets to rate or recommend the coach? And we figured out real quick that we did not want to be Yelp in terms of like Yelp, the empty barrels get heard the loudest, right? And the platform sort of encourages outrage. And those are the things that get shared. And that's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do.
Sure.
We're trying to empower great coaches. And so in the beginning, it was thought of, we started from more of almost a LinkedIn for coaches. And then we evolved as we started. So we built a very deep best practices platform to help parents understand what their role is, what the boundaries are, and what they should know about their coach, and share with other parents, like, this is a great coach and these are the things we're doing. And, you know, that's where we started, and we built on top of that the ability for a one-stop shop for a coach to become trained, Safe Sport, which is anti-abuse training, CDC heads-up concussion trained, USOPC's how to coach kids training, one-stop shop where you could become trained, background checked, and display your certification for the world to see. And I think that's really important to sort of wake up parents to this idea that just because somebody puts the hat on doesn't make them qualified, right? And the great coaches all know this, and they embrace the continuing education that's involved in anybody who's a good coach is always trying to learn more. So the second part of our survey, of course, was, have you ever Googled where to go to lunch? Everybody had Googled where to go to lunch. Nobody had Googled who their kid's coach was. And one of the reasons why is because they knew that if they did, they wouldn't find anything. So we set out to solve that problem.
I love that. And, in a sport like tennis, that is an individual sport where, as you said, I think more than in team sports, even, we parents are sending our children off with coaches without parents being present. Oftentimes it's one coach, one kid, or one coach, maybe two kids, if two families are sharing the expense for a tournament. And, a lot of times we don't know. We don't know anything about that coach other than what we're seeing, when we drop off and pick up our kids at their practices. I know I've mentioned this a lot of times over the years, but when our son started traveling with his coach without us, we established a safe word and told our son if anything ever happened while he was out of town or anywhere, with his coach without us there, that if he called and said that safe word, that would trigger an emergency response on our behalf. And I thought, my husband came up with that. My husband's a litigator, and
it's so smart. I've never heard that, by the way. I'm going to start sharing that. That's really smart.
Good. Yeah. But I mean, what are you going to do? You send your 12-year-old kid off. They're staying in a hotel room with an adult, just the two of them a lot of times. I mean, it's scary. And I think really what triggered my conversation with you, other than John putting us in contact, which I was so happy about, was an article that I shared last week on this Facebook page about a coach in Northern California who had been accused of some untoward behavior, and that's a generous term. And the governing body ignored the complaints, did nothing. And it took a player stepping up to, actually file a complaint to get this coach tried and convicted. So it shouldn't be the onus of the kids to take care of this stuff. And before you address that, let me just say, we just got a question in. How does the app gather info about the coaches? So I'm going to let you weave that into what you say.
Yeah, so let me answer that question directly. So we have a partnership with U.S. Center for Safe Sport, which involves an API, which is a technical connection. So as coaches become trained in the trainings that we support and the background checks, it automatically populates their profiles and verifies. So unlike, for example, LinkedIn, you can post anything on your LinkedIn. Most people are really truthful. Some people stretch it a little. Most of the stuff on Great Coach is verified through partnerships and connections with the certifying authorities. So that's the short answer. The coach also can populate their profile, and we very much encourage them to do so, with some of the things that I think are even more important than their certification and their experience, which is their motivation. So why do you want to coach? Maybe you have a kid who plays and you want to spend more time with your kid. Great. Let's hear about that. Also, how do you coach? Right? Are you, and the idea is to let's align the right athletes and the right families with the right coaches, and so that everybody can have a great experience. So if you're a kind of win at all costs, I got to get the D1 scholarship, I've got to get absolute results, I don't care. I mean, great, that there's a coach who does that. If you're a different type of coach, it's more transitional than transactional. Express that in your profile and people can understand what type of coach you are. Are you an equal play coach in a team sport, right? Are you, no matter what the performance is, you're going to play them equally on the power play and when you're shorthanded in hockey terms. So those are the ways that the profiles are populated. Now, to get back to your unhappy circumstance, and I read that story as well. Unfortunately, I have my Google alert set for athlete abuse in amateur sport, and I get 10 of those stories every single day. So it's terrible.
I hate hearing that.
I hate looking at that one, but that's, certainly the NGB, or the national governing body, is responsible. But here's the deal. We're never going to have a police force that's large enough to police the grassroots interactions of every sport. So it's us. We are the community, right? And that's why we love sports. It's our family, right? It becomes our family. But we need to take responsibility as parents, and yes, as athletes at a certain point, to say something. But as coaches and administrators, we need to take the responsibility to listen and to seek out the information that would, and to, lend credence to what we're hearing from kids, and to learn how to listen in the right way to figure out challenges and problems before they become huge problems. Because what we see is the vast majority of coaches are absolutely doing it for the right reasons, and they're some of the best people I've ever met in my life. But sometimes even a really well-meaning coach can say something in the wrong way and cause real damage and real harm. And so it's all of our responsibility to step up, and that starts with learning who is coaching our kids, right? And then understanding the role of a parent to provide feedback and an athlete to provide feedback. And so, another feature that we built into Great Coach is something we call safe messaging. So you really don't want to have non-transparent electronic communication between an adult and a minor. In other words, you don't want a coach texting directly with a child. However, at a certain age, it gets really hard to keep track of your athletes, through their parents. So we just developed safe messaging through our app, where the parent is essentially blind copied in the app on every single message, and the admin of the club or the team also has a copy that's non-editable, non-deletable, that stays in their dashboard and is easily searchable.
So in tennis, that would be the club director or the academy director.
Exactly, or probably both.
Yeah.
Right, and we're actually even working with a company on some machine learning and AI, so that it would read all the safe messaging to flag potentially inappropriate things, so that somebody didn't have to read every single message that was sent.
Got it. And so if, God forbid, there is an occurrence of untoward behavior, whatever that looks like in a particular instance, how does that get reported on Great Coach? And how does that get shared so that other parents who might be using that same coach or considering using that same coach know to avoid them?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's another place where we diverge from Yelp. So first of all, if it's a question of abuse, we have a report abuse button essentially on Great Coach that goes right to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, which is where you report sexual and non-sexual abuse. We all become mandatory reporters by virtue of the Safe Sport Act of 2017. So if we know something about that, we are legally required to report that to U.S. Center for Safe Sport or to local authorities. But our app automatically reports it to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. It is also shared with the admin, not with the coach who is, being flagged for some untoward behavior, as you say. Oh, wow. Sorry, we just had a little earthquake here in Salt Lake City.
Oh my goodness.
It's like the fourth one of the day.
Really?
Yeah, seriously. I don't know. Did anyone shake?
I didn't notice anything. That's crazy. I'm the
And
one in
I'm
Southern
on the
California.
starting of, like, yeah, I know. We had one about a week ago, and we're still getting aftershocks. So sorry.
Goodness.
I have no idea what I was saying now.
So we were talking about flagging behavior and that the admin was notified, but not the coach.
Right, right. And the admin is notified of who the complaint was made about, and then it was reported to the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. It's unfortunately that's a utility that we had to build into our app, and I think it's valuable. But I think that prescriptive measures are much better than reactionary measures, and I think that as a community we need to step up. And I think that particularly as you and I were talking about the other day when we first chatted, I think that when we return to sport post-COVID, we may have an economic downturn. We may have more people choosing to not participate in tons and tons of travel and maybe more localized play. And I think that this is an amazing opportunity for us to hit the reset button. And one of the things that needs to happen throughout all sports is an absolute insistence on training and screening of all coaches. No one should be able to just put on a hat, and a tracksuit and be out there and say, I'm a great coach. Everybody should have to have certain training, and we all need to start from a certain framework. And what that creates is a vocabulary within our communities. I'm very involved in the hockey community, and hockey was one of the early ones to jump on safe sport training, for example. Now there's and every single coach is required to have safe sport training, and then the refresher courses every year, and then every other year you have to do safe sport training again. But what I've seen
let me interrupt you. For those
Sure.
who aren't familiar with safe sport training, and it is in place in tennis as well, can you give us just the 10-second rundown of what that is?
For sure. So the U.S. Center for Safe Sport was created first under the umbrella of what was then the U.S. Olympic Committee, which is now the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. It was because of perceived conflicts of interest spun off into its own individual nonprofit entity called the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. It is still funded by the USOPC and by the Olympic national governing bodies. There was an act that was passed in 2017 called the Safe Sport Preventing Abuse for Minors in Sport, Safe Sport Act of 2017, or something like that. So the act says that any Olympic sport, every coach must be trained in abuse prevention, so the U.S. Center for Safe Sport created the course. They deliver the course. In our case, they deliver it through our app, and we track it. They also audit organizations to make sure that their coaches are in compliance, and they also enforce it. So when they get an accusation or a complaint, they actually have investigators who investigate it. So safe sport has come to be this catch-all for what's often thought of as anti-sexual abuse, but it's not just sexual abuse. It's verbal abuse, it's bullying, it's hazing, both in the real world and online. So safe sport has become this catch-all term. But what I was talking about is what I've seen that's really positive is no matter which hockey coach I'm talking to, we have now this shared vocabulary that came from, we all have to be trained by USA Hockey if our organization is a USA Hockey organization. They have done a really good job of creating a progression that you must proceed or stop coaching. And it's not perfect, but we all can share the same concepts. And now parents are starting to understand the vocabulary, understand their responsibility within the sport ecosystem. And I think that as we return to sport from COVID, we have an amazing opportunity to all, yes, we're going to have to monitor the activities that our kids are going to go into. We want to make sure that they're clean and safe and sterile, and that the return to sport progression is followed. But beyond that, I think that this provides an amazing opportunity for parents and coaches and everybody who's involved in the sport community to become more involved and more responsibility. And only by doing that will we create a better and safer environment. So getting all the way back to that terrible story, I think that was in the Washington Post. Yes, certainly the NGB is responsible, but we as a community need to police our own community. And so where we feel like we're adding to that is by giving people reliable data to understand who people are, what their motivations are, and what their training is. And that's how you build reliable communications, by all agreeing on a certain set of protocol that these really important people to our kids' lives called coaches need to have.
Gotcha. And if people want to look up a coach, how do they go about doing that? Do they just go to your website? And I've posted the link in the comments on this live stream.
Sure. Yes. Right now we don't. So we're a 2-year-old startup, and as I say, we started off by building a really deep best practices app. We didn't get a lot of buy-in until the Safe Sport Act made it really uncomfortable for organizations and teams not to comply with what we thought were best practices. But once it became law, then we started adding many more coaches. So you won't go there today and find many tennis coaches. One thing that is very useful for anybody in any sport right now, we also took it upon ourselves to aggregate all the banned coaches lists. So U.S. Center for Safe Sport.
What's the banned coaches list? I mean, obvious, but where does it come from?
So U.S. Center for Safe Sport publishes a list of coaches who have been banned from coaching for a safe sport violation.
Okay.
Each national governing body also publishes a list. We've done our best. Yes. Yeah.
I had no idea that existed.
In some sports, they're really front and center. Track and field is really front and center. In others, they're public facing, but not quite as easily accessible.
Okay, so those of you watching, I'm going to add a link to that on parentingaces.com. So it's going to be forward facing on parentingaces.com.
Yeah, and so you can go to our app and you can go to the banned coaches registry and you can see. I apologize. I should have looked to see what your NGB is doing in that regard. I don't know off the top of my head what tennis is doing and how they handle it. But it's something to be looked into.
I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of it. So I suspect, I know they are requiring coaches to go through safe sport training to be part of the Net Generation initiative, but beyond that, I'm not sure.
So there's also background checks that some states, I think there are 11 states today, require all coaches to be background checked. I don't know what tennis does as an NGB, what their policy is. I would suspect that they require a background check of every coach that is a member, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the issue with tennis, it's kind of complicated because the USTA, which is the NGB, doesn't certify the coaches. There are two other organizations, USPTA and PTR, that do the coaching certification. And they are in cooperation with USTA, but it's not the same organization. They are separate. And so I'm not sure what PTA and PTR require versus what
Mhm.
UST requires and what the overlap is. But I do know in terms of the Net Generation Initiative, the Safe Sport certification, because I went through that just because I wanted to see for myself how it worked.
Right.
I'm not a coach, but it is required. And I
Well,
passed, by the
good.
way.
The
Yeah.
U.S. Center for Safe Sport also offers free safe sport training for parents and athletes, minor athletes. So it's free. Again, it's not the most, as I'm sure you'll agree, not the most pleasant educational uh, material you've ever encountered, but it's really important.
But it's important. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
it's maybe the most important educational material that we have.
Yeah, and I really think that, you know, anybody who's watching, if you take away one thing from this chat, you know, just ask the questions. Who's my coach? How are they trained? You know, when I came into coaching hockey, I had played in college, and I had also been a pro skier, and I'd been around sports all my life, and I thought I knew everything. I really did, and I thought I need coaches training. Yeah, you know, I played at a high level. Well, I didn't know anything
Yeah.
really. I really didn't. You know, and now a decade in, I finally understand, and I feel like I'm finally becoming an okay coach. Right, but you know, it's important that, and especially I think the way the world is shifting, the way that kids are um, often socially marooned by our electronic communications, which was not the intent of them, but you know, sports is a place where we do come together as humans and we participate as humans. And so I think the role of the coach is so elevated from where it was 20 years ago in terms of
Yeah.
importance in a kid's life. And the things that a coach says, you know, can really be impactful one way or the other.
Right.
You know, I've already had kids and their parents come up to me and say, you know, that thing you said 7 years ago changed everything for my coach, for my kid. And I'm like, what did I say? I don't even remember saying that, right? And thank God I said something good, right? So anyway, I think that that's the really important thing. You know, whether you use Great Coach or not, you know, we provided a platform that makes it easy for an organization to sign us up. We take care of all the compliance. We're actually working on a really exciting post-COVID return to sport protocol,
Oh.
where we can track everything from temperature, daily temperature taking, to um, quick surveys that you can take in the app to understand if you've had any symptoms, if you've been in contact with anybody, where you've been for the last 14 days. So we're listening to a bunch of different sources, and we're creating a return to sport quicker and safer sort of module within our app that we're very excited about. But all of this is all about just sharing reliable data among responsible people to make the experience better for our kids. And you don't have to use us. Just, you know, again, Google your kid's coach, talk to other people, ask
Right.
coaches. You know, like one of the things when I got my level 4 USA hockey certification, I was sort of miffed because I had flown over to Colorado, spent the weekend with all these great coaches, 100 of us in a room. We all got this new certification, and I came back and nobody knew that I had this new knowledge, and there was no place to even say like, hey, you know, I just spent $1,500 of my own money to go over there and get trained so I could do a better job for your kids.
Right.
And everybody's like, yeah, whatever. You know, we trusted you before, we still trust you. So where I'm going with that is ask coaches, right? I mean,
Right.
as a parent, you're spending good money. I'm also a sports parent. I'm also very wary of inadvertently torpedoing my kids' chances with the coach, so you want to be delicate about that, but it's your right to know, like, what's your training?
Yeah. And I want to just say that, I've discussed in the past about what coaching certification looks like for tennis. Tennis coaches are not tested on their knowledge of junior development pathways. They are not tested on their knowledge of the college recruiting process. They're not tested on their knowledge of tournament structure. They're not tested on nutrition or fitness or any of that stuff. So just because a tennis coach has USPTA or PTR behind their name, that's not enough. It's a start, but it's not enough. And so I think, just to tack on to what you've been saying, Bill, the onus is on us as parents to ask those questions, to find out what knowledge or lack of knowledge is present in the person that we're entrusting our child to, because it's important. They spend a lot of hours with their youth coach, both on the field and off the field, on the court and off the court. And it's important that our kids are around good people. And
absolutely.
And there's nobody doing that background check. It's our responsibility.
Yeah, and I implore clubs and organizations to require more from your coaches. And whenever I say that, everybody says, "Oh, we have such a hard time even finding coaches. We don't want to give them more to do." In my experience, and maybe this is counterintuitive, but the more you ask of a volunteer coach, the more bought in they become.
Sure.
Right? And so I want to give a plug to Chris Schneider at the USOPC, who's their director of coaching, has developed a really great free coaching platform called How to Coach Kids. He developed it in conjunction with Nike and the Aspen Institute's Project Play. You can just Google howtocoachkids.org. It's a free, and it's soft, what they call it. This is unfortunate the way they talk about it, but they call it soft skills, which is the most important skills. Yeah. The X's and O's, it's not that hard, right? Like technique is easier than being a great communicator and being a great motivator and being a great leader, which you're called upon to do as a coach. And this platform, this educational curriculum, they have, I think, 5 different modules. There's a special one for how to coach girls. Can't remember what the other ones are, but howtocoachkids.org. Great program. Again, it's free. They've really put a lot of thought into it. Most people don't know it exists. I would love to see every organization require their coaches to take at least one of those modules. It's a 20-minute module, but it puts things in your head, which really helps you become a better coach.
I love that. I'll add that link too to our site. So for the parents that want to take a look at it and share it with their child's coach. So Bill, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I've got another live coming in an hour and a half too, so I need to regroup for that one. But
cool. Should I be watching that one? Who's that one?
Yeah, it's with 2 young men who are high school tennis players. They happen to be cousins, and their team is on hiatus due to COVID-19, and they were trying to figure out what they could do to kind of stay involved with tennis, but also do good in their community. And so they have started an initiative, and they're challenging high school tennis teams around the country to get involved. It's called Tennis Treat Bags. And so we're going to be chatting with them and having them share information on that. But no reason that hockey teams couldn't get involved in that as well.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
I love to hear good ideas, and there's so many of them out there. And I mean, yeah, these are tough times for all of us. Yeah. I really miss, for me, going to the rink every day. And I know that the kids really miss it, but we'll come through this. And if we come through it right, I think that this could, because we're going to have to pay more attention to health the health of our kids and the health of the coaches and the health of all of us as we return to venues. I hope that that transfers over to more responsibility and for a real widespread acceptance of how important all sports are in the lives of kids today. And I'm not just talking about, the scholarship. And actually, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about the really important lessons that are learned. And if you happen to sort of get some commercial or some financial benefit from playing a sport, wow, great. That's the cherry on top. But the real thing that hopefully we come out of COVID and really can all say, like, man, we missed this. And what we really missed, was not the service ace, but it was being around other players, being able to be active out there. And, what a blessing that is for all of us. And so hopefully we come back more grateful and more responsible. And all across sport, it's a better experience for the kids because of it.
I agree. And earlier this week, I did a live interview with Tim Russell, the CEO of the Intercollegiate Tennis Association, and we talked about what college tennis may look like after all this mess is over with. And the long and the short of it is there's a lot we don't know right now. So it's hard to predict what college tennis is going to look like, what scholarships are going to look like, what playing opportunities and funding and all of that are going to look like. And so to use sport simply as a means to get a college scholarship, that whole thought process needs to shift right now. And it shouldn't have been the focus before, but right now, especially for a sport like tennis, where it is a non-revenue sport, we gotta start thinking about the more important pieces of why we're putting our kids in tennis. Yes, the college scholarship is nice if your kid gets one, but more important than that are the life lessons that they are gaining, the character skills they're gaining, the contacts they're making, the thought processes that they develop as a competitive athlete, the time management skills. All of these things are the reason for putting your child into sport. And I think now, talking with you, Bill, and learning more about Great Coach and what the purpose behind Great Coach is in terms of making sure our children are in the care of coaches who are good people and who are great coaches, yes, but are great human beings more importantly. This has just got to come to the forefront right now. And so I think our takeaway from today is A, make sure you Google your kid's coach. B, share this Great Coach platform with your child's coach, with your club, with your academy, with your local USTA office. Let people know about this. Help get the word out that there is a platform out there to help our coaches promote themselves in a positive manner and help us as consumers to make great decisions when it comes to choosing coaches for our kids. Did I leave anything out?
Thank you so much for saying, you said that so well. Let me add one more feature to my crass commercial pitch. And that is that we also help the organization we're going to help you save time, money, and mitigate risk by creating a one-stop shop for all your training, all your screening, all your compliance, including soon return to sport compliance. So, if you're using Google Sheets and Excel spreadsheets to track different certifications and when this expires and when that expires, I can tell you for sure, we're really inexpensive. We can help the organization do a better job for everybody. And at the end of the day, it's going to make our kids have a better, safer, more enriching experience in whatever sport they're playing, and particularly tennis. I mean, tennis is a great sport for us, I think, to be involved in. And there's no reason, that tennis is a sport. I looked a while back at, it's highly digitally enabled, right? Like everybody's got a smartphone in that particular sport, right? Yep. I mean, we can really help. and we can help each stakeholder group within the sport. But you said it so well, so thank you, and thank you so much for having me today and listening to me talk.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, and good luck with the continuing development of Great Coach. And check in from time to time. Let us know what you're adding, and maybe we'll do a podcast, or I don't know, something to help spread the word.
And thank you just for existing, because what you're doing is really helping parents understand that they have a role, and it's a really important role. And there are many facets to their role. And I've checked out your other broadcasts and such, and your whole vibe and your whole direction is so positive. So thanks for being around and doing what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Stay well, Bill. Stay
You
sane.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
That was made to begin with, but yeah.
Thanks everybody for watching, and make sure you check out Great Coach. We've got the link in the comments, and we'll be back in about a little less than an hour and a half with another live stream. So check us out. Bill, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Have a great day.